Whelan Presley Funeral Home and Crematory, a proud supporter of WQPT, has been serving Quad City families since 1889. They now have live stream capabilities for viewing your loved one's funeral or memorial service.
At IHM VCU, we've always been here for you. You are and always will be our top priority. We care about your financial and physical health, and we are here. IHM VCU is a proud supporter of WQPT.
Western starts a new semester with new safeguards and moving Iowa to a flat tax or even no tax at all. Welcome to the cities. In her Condition of the State address, Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds announced big changes to the state's tax plan. The biggest is a phase-in to a flat tax statewide on income. We'll have more on that in a moment. But first, Western Illinois University and the changes we're seeing as we enter a new year. Western, like schools worldwide, went from a normal campus environment to a pandemic-induced shutdown to remote classrooms to a hybrid of that of sorts, and now to a return to classrooms, but with conditions. With the Omicron variant now surging, what are the latest conditions facing students, staff, and administrators? We talked with Assistant Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Christy Mindrup, who is also the administrator in charge of the Quad Cities campus. So we're starting a new semester in 2022, of course, but you've got the same old problem with COVID. It's interesting because Western is now kind of adapting to the latest Omicron variant, isn't it?
Yeah, to some degree we are adapting, and to some degree we're continuing on with the good practices we've had in place now since way back in summer of 20, continuing with face coverings, social distancing, and so on. But we've added a few more layers of, I guess, safety to the campus as we prepare for the spring semester.
Of course, it has a bigger issue, I would think, in Macomb than the Quad Cities, only because of the dormitories. How has that been working in Macomb so far?
Well, you definitely have a different student population and living situation between the Quad Cities campus and Macomb. And so the additional layers of safety that we're looking at is the gateway testing to kick off the semester. Students, faculty, and staff will all be required to do a COVID test before they come to campus. So that's one layer. As I said, we're continuing the other protocols that we have in place for social distancing and limiting gatherings and those sorts of things, as well as just making sure that the classrooms, the environments throughout campus are socially distanced as well as cleaned and sanitized on a regular basis.
Well, you do know, as far as vaccinations are concerned, some schools have demanded that their students are fully vaccinated and also have the booster shot. Has Western really pushed this idea?
We've really encouraged our faculty, staff, and students toward the vaccine. We have solid percentages for both populations on both campuses who have elected to get that vaccine and as well as the booster. And then what we also see for individuals who do not get vaccinated, we have had a testing requirement over the past semester. And then this January, especially while Omicron is a factor, we'll do weekly testing for all populations. So whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, to just make sure that we have that additional layer of safety on campus as we kick off the semester.
That seems to be the key right now as we enter the third year. Can you believe I'm saying that? The third year of this pandemic is the importance of testing right now. And as you well know, nationwide in the private sector, getting the test results are all becoming a huge issue, both in time, expense, and even availability. Is that a problem at all at Western?
It has not been a problem for either of our campuses through the arrangements that we have to provide testing on the Quad Cities campus, as well as those for testing through the health center and other resources in Macomb. So we've been able to provide a consistent testing protocol for our community.
You do know of so many frustrations with this ongoing pandemic and the regulations and the mandates that are going on. And I hate to say this, and you can slap me the next time you see me because I'm going to say this. Have we reached this new normal type of period where just the fact that you have to be tested or that you are wearing a mask when you're in a, I'll say a crowded classroom, so to speak, is just acceptable now?
I think constantly pivoting is kind of the new normal. Our university community, including our faculty, staff, and students, are pretty agile to the situation. We do evaluate the situation ongoing. So as we know, through the last, since March of 20, we've learned so much about the pandemic, both about the virus itself, as well as the effective ways that we can respond to it and the behaviors that we can put in place to ensure the safety of our community. And so I think overall, we're adapting with the rest of the world, and I think we have the benefit of a university community that has access to information, opportunities for dialogue among employee groups, with faculty expertise, with the partnership and the expertise we have within our communities as well.
Well, I still think back a few years ago when former President Dr. Jack Thomas was talking about how he wanted to push Western more into online learning and use more of the computer education. Well, look what happened in the last 2 years, how all universities and even K through 12 schools were actually forced to do that. There must be some practices that you've learned from that you want to continue, almost like keeping the good but getting rid of the bad.
We have learned a great deal about the way course format creates opportunities in the classroom, new ways of instruction that our brilliant faculty are applying to their classroom environments, using Zoom and other technologies, integrating them together in innovative ways, and also capturing new student populations, thinking about the post-traditional student or the working student. Both of those populations, among others, are looking for that added flexibility. So while many of our students want a balanced university experience, the added flexibility of online learning has been kind of a silver lining in how we balance those two types of experiences, because we do want to offer an engaging experience on campus where students are interacting with each other, interacting with faculty in a safe way. And when we need to, we also look at those alternative formats. So it's a true balancing act that ebbs and flows with each semester.
When you're seeing possible freshmen looking to come to Western, I mean, have you noticed that? Is that over the last 2 years, these high school students have been doing remote learning and not necessarily classroom learning, that now do they thirst for the college experience, or are they now so used to online learning they don't mind staying with that process?
It's a bit of both, I would say. We see that students do still crave that social interaction in and out of the classroom, as well as many of them are more open, I think, to online learning because they've experienced that within the safety of either their high school experience, which was kind of a familiar setting, or in their work experience with their employer. So when they come to WIU, they're prepared in those ways. And what we've tried to do over the past 2 years and ongoing is to balance that, to create both those virtual opportunities as well as safe in-person activities when we can.
Western was very proud of its enrollment numbers, seeing some light at the end of the tunnel in the fall. Particularly, I know that you were pointing out a great increase in international students and at least holding on to a student population that you had. The other side of the coin is also retention into that second semester. Do you have a feel on how well that went this year?
It's too early to tell right now. We are just a few days away from the start of the spring semester. With the pandemic, what we've learned is that trends we rely on in the past aren't necessarily predictors, but so far we like what we see. We're seeing stable numbers continued interest, continued efforts by our teams on both campuses to connect with students and get them ready for the spring semester. And that applies to both the Macomb and Quad Cities campuses.
And specifically for the Quad City campus, I mean, are you retaining the students there, do you feel? Are we able to grow this campus?
We are, absolutely. There are a number of signs that we see both stability and growth. As I mentioned, the increased access to online learning has been something that has benefited the population of the Quad Cities campus, those post-traditional and working students that we attract, but also the first-year students that the Quad Cities campus attracts. And we're looking at a number of new programs that we know will attract students. We have a focus on ensuring that our portfolio of offerings is aimed toward the community interests as well as the student demand for the types of academic experiences and careers they ultimately would like to have, whether they are in the Quad Cities region or beyond that.
And Western, in the Quad Cities, is going to be offering an early childhood degree. You know, as well as countless people in Iowa and Illinois, that there is such a need for early childhood care. I mean, these working mothers, these working families are finding it very difficult to find daycare. How much do you think that program is going to really be impactful in the Quad Cities?
We have great aspirations for that program because of that exact need and that demand in our Quad Cities area. Often you'll hear the term child care desert as far as the access that our community has to preschool education in the Quad Cities. And so our early childhood education program is really designed, first of all, to attract a new population, a new generation of early childhood educators. Second, then, to involve those educators and our faculty in creating preschool opportunities for young people within the context of our program. So really a hands-on learning opportunity for our WIU students, but then also we are aiming toward community involvement in that as well. So access from our community to be able to access preschool services from Western Illinois University. And so very excited about the evolving conversations and plans for that.
Well, and then the potential for adding more students to the Western campus. The Common App is now part of Western's offerings to possible incoming students. How does that work, and how is that going to help families and students who are thinking of coming to Western?
Well, the Common App is an interesting tool that families can use to apply to any school in the state of Illinois. And what we've seen from WIU is increased interest through the ability for students to look at what institutions are available in the state of Illinois and seeing Western on that list and submitting that application and being part of the consideration, Western being part of their consideration for where they attend college. And so it's really created an added convenience and another avenue and tool for students to connect with Western Illinois University.
Well, getting ready for that last semester for the 2021-2022 school year, optimism, I take it, because there's so many new programs, so many new ideas that are emanating out of Macomb and the Quad Cities.
We're very excited and optimistic on both campuses, in part because of those new programs. In addition to early childhood, recent additions also include our psychology program, which is growing leaps and bounds. That was a high demand program that our community was asking for, that our students were calling and asking for, so we were able to meet that need. And then also the addition of civil and electrical engineering. The demand for engineers is also very high in the Quad Cities region and beyond. And so Western aims to deliver, to recruit students to those programs and to generate high qualified alumni that contribute then to the workforce and the quality of life in our community.
Western Illinois University Assistant Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Christy Mindrup. In a moment, Iowa looking to tax its citizens differently. But first, Laura Adams joins us with some great ideas during this cold month, if you want to go out and about.
This is Out and About for January 20th through 27th. Quad City United Basketball is looking to add some talent. Attend tryouts for the team on the 22nd at Friendly House. It's that time of year again for the fundraiser featuring Windy City Dueling Pianos in the Keys to a Good Time event at Bally's Quad Cities on the 22nd. Or check out the Hoosier Arena Cross Nationals coming to the Tax Slayer Center the 21st and 22nd. Players of all abilities are encouraged to join Can Play Courage League Sports at the Roosevelt Center January 24th and 31st. And the annual Eagles and Ivories Ragtime Weekend returns to Muscatine the 27th through the 30th. The Bucktown Review returns the 21st at the Davenport Junior Theater with special guests, the Front Porch Pickers and the Miracle Bluegrass Band. Also, Ryan Pelton, a tribute to the King, takes the stage at the Isle Casino in Bettendorf the 21st at 6:30. Tech 9 performs at the Rust Belt the 21st at 7, plus Rocksteady performs at the Rhythm City Casino the 21st at 7:30. The Lulac Club are looking for participants to dance, sing, or share their dishes from foreign countries. It's a multicultural love fest the 22nd starting at 1. United Township High School presents the play Radium Girls the 20th through the 23rd, and the hilarious The Play That Goes Wrong continues to tickle your funny bone at Circa 21. For more information, visit WQPT.org.
Thank you, Laura. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds wants her state to look a little more like Illinois. You heard me right. The one thing she wants that Illinois has is a flat tax on income. Under Governor Reynolds' plan, Iowa would stick to a 4% income tax for all of its taxpayers, but some want more. We talked with Republican State Senator Chris Cournoyer about the tax issues and how Iowa schools may change as well. Flat tax is what we're talking about right now. 4% flat tax. Are you fully in favor of that?
Well, I think it's a great start. We are ending another fiscal year with over $1 billion budget, and that's not our money, that's the taxpayers' money. So I think that we've shown that we have been able to weather a global, pandemic, and we have a diversified economy. We're bringing over $1 billion more in revenue than our budget needs, and it's time to return that back to the taxpayer, the people that earned it. You do know the argument between a flat tax and a progressive tax, with a flat tax being a flat rate of 4% on income, a progressive tax taxing people who make more, they get taxed more, people who make less get taxed less. Isn't that more fair? Yeah, well, this is the governor's proposal. So, we're going to have a proposal coming out of the Senate. I'm sure the House will have another proposal, and this is where we're going to start our negotiations. But I think the bottom line here is that we have to become more competitive in our tax structure to help not just with individuals in retaining people in our state, but attracting people in our state. And it'll not only help individuals, but it'll also help our businesses that can pass those savings along in higher wages to their employees. We've got, additionally, and we're losing people to Florida, those states that don't have state income tax, Florida, Texas, South Dakota, and they're all growing. There's other taxes that also have flat taxes, and they're seeing some growth too and some success in that. And I have colleagues that would like to eventually get to know state income tax as well. So I look forward to those discussions. Well, I was going to point that out. As you well know, the Senate President saying he wants to see Iowa to be a no income tax state. How feasible do you think that is? Well, I think we have to be responsible when we have those talks. We have a 5-year plan, and we're always looking at down the road and running the numbers to make sure that any cuts that we make today aren't going to hurt us down the road. We want to make sure that we're continuing to provide for our priorities and also the services that Iowans expect. Because to be honest, Iowa did weather the pandemic, at least fiscally, very well, but it also got a great deal of federal help in that area. Yeah, there is a ton of federal money that has come into Iowa, and I think the governor's doing a really good job dispersing that across the state, whether it be given to cities and counties, to school districts. She's also using it to invest in continuing the expansion of broadband across the state to make sure everybody has access to that high-speed internet. And then something interesting that she said in her speech was to give retention bonuses to our teachers, first responders, and correctional officers. I did see that as well. Does that seem to be like a cornerstone, a pillar that you support as far as retention of these critical workers? Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that these are the people that couldn't work remotely during the pandemic. You know, they weathered the storm, they hung in there, they went into work every day, and I think that you know, a retention bonus, $1,000. I mean, you know, I think it's a reasonable uh, use of that federal funds. I mean, it's one-time money. We can't use that federal money for ongoing expenses. So I think being creative with what you can do with one-time money. I think one of the things that she can do with them is one-time bonuses to show people that they are appreciated.
Let's talk about Iowa schools, because the Senate president really did lay down some very tough words towards school districts that are allowing certain books and certain lessons to be taught inside the schools, actually even calling for criminal prosecution of teachers who may break some of these laws as far as what he perceives as obscene material. You're a former school board president. You were listening to that as well. What was your initial blush? What's your first reaction?
Well, my first reaction to Senator Chapman's comments were that they were pretty bold and they were pretty aggressive. And you know, Senator Chapman speaks for Senator Chapman. He doesn't speak for the rest of us. But I understand Senator Chapman's concern with some of the materials that we're finding in public schools. You know, if there are graphic images and graphic content that is so sexual in nature that it can't be printed in the newspaper or printed, you know, shown on the evening news. And if it's not appropriate for the paper or the local news, I'm not sure how it's appropriate to be in a K-12 public school library. So that is something that we need to address. The governor mentioned it in her condition of the state address, and it's something that we're definitely going to be taking a hard look at. You know, I think that you know, his remarks were perceived as an attack on teachers. I support teachers, and I think that most educators and administrators across the state are doing the right thing for kids. And if there's one or two, you know, there's a few bad actors out there that are pushing inappropriate agendas on our kids. That is certainly something that we need to address.
But do you support his call for legislation that could criminally prosecute school employees who give obscene material to students?
Well, I mean, that's already illegal to distribute pornography or inappropriate content to students. So if there's something that we need to do to help enforce those laws, then I definitely support that.
Now, the governor was also calling, in her speech, as you mentioned, she brought up that topic as well. And one of the things that she wants to see as a solution is almost every school district giving a full list of the books that are in the library even, as well as those that are used for teaching, so that there's more transparency. That would be a Herculean effort for some smaller school districts.
Well, school libraries already have a list of the books that they have in their library. You know, simply publishing them on their website, I'm not sure would be too big of a task for them. But I think it's fair, you know, if you take your child down to the local public library, you can see all the books that are available in that library system. So, but you're there with your child when they're looking at those books, and you don't have that kind of oversight when they're in the school library. So I think taking that list that the schools already have of everything that that is in the school libraries now and putting it on the public website so parents can see what's out there, I think I don't see a problem with that.
There's also a strong push among Republicans to advance more school choice options for parents. As a former school board president, you know the importance of public schools and the fear that that will take money away from the public schools. How do you fall on that?
Well, I think, you know, we already have a lot of choice. You know, you can open enroll, you can first of all, you can send your child to public school, or you can open enroll to another neighboring district. If they have programs that are better suited to your child, you can go to private school, you can homeschool. I mean, there is already a lot of choice in education. So I haven't seen the governor's plans for what she intends to do with that. I think the discussion is more around those students that are living in poverty, and those lower income families that maybe can't afford to send their child to private school or take advantages of some of those choices. So helping them financially with some of those choices, I think that's where the conversation is going. But we already have quite a bit of school choice available to parents in the state of Iowa. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those you know, suggestions are, and I'll be in the room when we're negotiating them.
Let's talk about another issue that affects so many young families and young women in particular, and that is the need for child care. affordable childcare, even if it's even available. I mean, you know, there's waiting lists for months for women who are trying to get back into the workforce and finding it very difficult. Do you think Iowa's going to come to a better solution or an incentive in the coming year?
Yeah, well, we've done a lot of work in the last year, and the governor had a child care task force that made some excellent recommendations over this last interim that I hope that we'll be continuing to address that issue. I mean, it's a massive workforce issue. You know, if you don't have quality, dependable and affordable childcare for your children, it's hard for you to go into work and participate in the workforce. So it's really important. That's going to continue to be a priority. And the governor put forward some recommendations to help with public-private partnerships and incentives to get more daycare, childcare slots across the state. And that's not just daytime, but second shift workers and there's a variety of issues across the state. And I think the recommendations from that task force were strong, and I'm looking forward to working on that.
What is your biggest priority for this coming session, you personally?
Well, of course, tax cuts is always an important priority for me to lessen the burden on our hardworking Iowans. But I'm really proud of an initiative that we're working on, or I'm personally working on, to address maternal health care or women's health, specifically addressing crisis pregnancies, access to birth control, and supporting healthy pregnancies and postpartum support, especially postpartum mental health, and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to get women through healthy pregnancies, postpartum support, so our children can have the best start in life possible, because we know how important those first 0 to 5 years are. And if we can get them on a good path early, it will help them for the rest of their life and reach their maximum potentials.
Iowa State Senator Chris Cournoyer, Republican from LeClaire. On the air, on the radio, on the web, on your mobile device, and streaming on your computer. Thanks for taking some time to join us as we talk about the issues on the cities.
Whelan Presley Funeral Home and Crematory, a proud supporter of WQPT, has been serving Quad City families since 1889. They now have live stream capabilities for viewing your loved one's funeral or memorial service.
At IHM VCU, we've always been here for you. You are and always will be our top priority. We care about your financial and physical health, and we are here. IHM VCU is a proud supporter of WQPT.